So you want to eat a raw vegan diet and you want to be successful at it, creating the best health possible for your body. What is my secret after 30 years of being on a raw vegan diet? 30 years, what drives me to stay so strong at doing this all these years and so disciplined? Well, that is the first answer. It's being disciplined. And I explain to people and tell people you must love what you're doing to be successful at it, because if you're not, eventually you're going to hit a wall and you're not going to be able to go over that wall or even through that wall. The wall is going to block your goals. So for me, I have a goal of being successful that I am in love with because I love feeling healthy. In other words, I hate feeling sick and I prefer to feel healthy over the temporary pleasure that a certain food might give me. So I'm able to avoid those foods knowing my ultimate goal and loving my ultimate goal. If you have a goal that you don't love or you're not aware of, it's going to be much more difficult to be successful in the long run at eating a raw vegan diet. But you can apply those principles to anything in life. Now, I want to talk a little bit about diet and how to eat it and when to eat it. I have found some of the major causes of people stopping or failing at a raw food diet is number one, eating too much. Eating too much. For whatever reason somebody might have in their mind, they think they need to eat more fatty foods or they need to eat more foods to put on the weight that they think they might need, and so on. Yes, you can come up to a short fall with eating too little, and it's something that some people might get into when they want to eat a raw vegan diet. And to my surprise and to your surprise, the more common issue is people eating too much, not too little. You see, we don't have any laws stopping us from how much we can eat in a meal. If it wasn't for the money and the cost, most people would just eat until they get themselves sick. But thankfully, because of the cost of certain foods, especially healthy foods, it stops us from overeating. However, some people still find a way to overeat, usually people that are eating cheap, unhealthy food. But even then, it's not expensive to eat a raw food diet. So, overeating. When you're eating a raw food diet, overeating can be an issue just as much as if you're not eating a raw food diet. And this is the most common issue. You do not need to eat more than 2 to 3 meals a day. You could even get by on 1 meal a day if you're doing this the right way. And some people say, well, I'm very active and I exercise a lot, so I need to eat more. Well, when you're eating your meal, eat more. Don't eat all throughout the day, eating, eating, and eating, and eating. Give yourself a window of when you're going to eat. Give yourself an amount of meals of what you're going to eat, and do not go beyond that. So if you decide for yourself you're going to eat 3 times a day, and so it goes along with your schedule, if you get up every morning at 7 o'clock in the morning, maybe you eat your first meal at 10 o'clock, and then you evenly space it out. So maybe your next meal will be at 1 o'clock, and then maybe your last meal will be at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock. And say by 6 o'clock, I'm done eating for the day. If you're eating 2 meals a day, it might be at 11 and 4. If you're eating, I don't recommend more than 3 meals a day, but you could space it out according to your work schedule, your sleeping schedule, and so on. So if you get up really early in the morning, your first meal might be earlier. Your last meal might be earlier. If you get up late in the morning because you're up late at night working, just might have to ship things a little later. But 2 to 3 meals a day should give you all you need from a nutritional standpoint, from a calorie standpoint, and so on. Now, if you desire more food, the answer is not to eat more throughout the day or throughout the night. The answer is to eat more when you're eating your meal. And your body will hopefully guide you to let you know when you're full so you don't overeat. But if you keep picking all day and picking all day and picking all day, it's going to run an issue. And one of the ways to help your body guide you to tell you when it's time to stop eating is to follow correct food combining. When you're not food combining correctly, your body will lose that sign to tell you, hey, you're full. Stop eating. But if you want a true reaction, follow food combining. And food combining basically is knowing what foods digest best with other foods. And a basic rule is the foods with the most liquid will digest with other foods that have a lot of liquid in them. And the foods with the least liquid will digest best with the foods that have the least liquid. So it gets more involved in it. And I'll put a link to a food combining chart that I sell on my website, which talks about starches and carbohydrates and proteins and leafy greens. To know that leafy greens go with everything. You could eat them with fruit. You can eat them with starches. You can eat them with everything. But for the most part, uh, when it comes to fruits, there's different categories of fruits. There's acid, subacid, sweet fruit, and dried fruit. And then when it comes to the nuts and seeds versus the starches, and you want to know what to eat together and how to eat together. And there's a lot of information on the internet of how to get to the fine details of food combining. For me, I keep it simple and say eat the high liquid food with other high liquid foods. So, for example, how do we know what foods have the most liquid in them? Well, hopefully you're all familiar with juicing. Juicing is another way to give your body some nutrients while you're not eating a meal. If you're still hungry or feel a need for food, juicing would be a good substitute, because even though you're getting that sensation of food, you're giving your body the nutrients, you're not giving your body the actual food that's going to weigh you down and create all the problems that happen with overeating. So outside of your 2 to 3 meals a day, if you're still hungry, if you have a juicer in your house, you can juice your foods and you could drink that juice to substitute for the hunger cravings that you're having, and normally you would eat a meal. So it should be very simple to eat 2 to 3 times a day without eating more than that, especially if you're juicing at those times when you feel you need more. Now, the great thing about the juicer is it teaches us what foods have the most liquid in them. If you take uh, celery, lettuce, or spinach, or cucumber, and you put these through a juicer, you see a lot of liquid come out of these. Now, on the other side of that, if you take a banana, there's not much juice coming out of a banana. If you take a watermelon, there's a lot of liquid coming out of a watermelon. So this would tell me if I'm eating the foods that have the most liquid with other foods that have the most liquid, a watermelon and a banana would not be the best combination to eat. So if you want your body to truly tell you when you're full, time to stop eating, don't eat a watermelon and a banana together, because it kind of turns off that signal and you can end up overeating, creating a whole bunch of problems by miscombining that food. But when you're eating, let's say you're eating just watermelon, or if you're eating just bananas, eventually your body's going to tell you, okay, you've had enough and it's time to stop eating. Now, they call that a mono meal because you're only eating one food at one time. Now, within food combining, you don't have to do it in a mono meal. You can eat something like an apple and a pear, which has a similar type of liquid, and you can eat them in the same meal. You can eat an orange and a grapefruit. You can eat a melon, like a watermelon, and maybe a cantaloupe in the same meal, and it'll still give you that signal to say you've had enough. But if I sit down to a meal that has bananas and then some berries and then some oranges and then some, oh, the cat's over there, and whatever it is, the more I add to my meal, the more it's not going to give me that signal to say, hey, you've had enough, slow down, it's time to stop eating, this meal is done with. So consider that and keep that in mind. So 2 to 3 meals and food combining. So I have several basic rules of food combining. And the first one is try to think in my mind which foods have the most liquid in them and eat them with other foods that have the most liquid in them. The other thing is fat. Fat is where it gets tricky with food combining, because for fats, there's different types of fats. There's nuts and seeds, and then there's avocados. Pretty much on a raw vegan diet, that's what it comes down to. Nuts and seeds and avocado when it comes to fats. These are the two major types of fats. Now, there's some other fats like a durian or some other exotic thing like ackee, which for the most part, most people into a raw vegan diet are not eating on a regular basis. But when it comes to your meal, besides the liquid, when it comes to food combining, think about fats. So if I'm going to have nuts in my meal, I'm going to try not to eat fat in the same meal or even the same day. I'm going to choose what my fat is going to be for the day. Is it going to be nuts and seeds, or is it going to be an avocado? That's what I'm going to try to decide. Now, I have figured for me, and everyone's on their own journey, but I have figured for me, a low-fat raw vegan diet is ideal. So I don't consume too much fat. And for years, I did consume a lot of fat. And for years, I missed combining the fats. And this, I wouldn't say created an issue, but I think it held me back from certain things that I'll talk about in other videos. But I was definitely eating too much fat, because when you miscombine fats, you never get that signal that you've had enough. Same situation as we're talking about food combining anything. The more mono you keep it, or the less ingredients you keep it, the better off it's going to be. So every raw vegan is some point throughout the day going to make a salad. And some people might say a big salad, and that's fine. You have your big salad. What is your fat going to be in the salad? For myself, it's either going to be avocado, and if it's avocado, I might chop up avocados in there. I might have a kimchi or a sauerkraut that I might put some avocado in and eat it. Or I might even have a recipe that I've made that has an avocado as the base. I might make a dressing that has avocado as the base. But avocado is my fat of the day. Avocado is my fat for the salad. I try not to eat too much of it. And I know people that do eat too much fat, I think, and it can run into some issues. But I find they're going to have a less of a chance of overeating on avocados if they're not eating other fats. Now we get to nuts and seeds. Nuts and seeds are another fat. So I have found for me what works best is to not eat nuts and seeds and fats in the same meal. Now, seeds are a little bit more forgiving. And to be honest, I do have seeds with my meal. I pretty much have hemp seeds in all my salads, regardless if there's avocado in there or not. Seeds are a little bit more forgiving. You can eat seeds with the fat. I still prefer not to, but I do have like I said, hemp seeds in my meals. Sometimes I might have flax seeds, which aren't necessarily a nut. Again, they're a seed, but I might have some sprinkled flax seeds on top of my salad, regardless if there's an avocado in there or not. But nuts are different. I'll do my best not to have nuts and avocado in the same meal. On an occasion, my wife might make me a recipe and I will have them together. And I definitely notice I don't get that signal to say, you've had enough, stop eating, because the very reasons I'm telling you. So you're either eating seeds in your main meal or fats, or avocado. Now, if I don't have any avocados available, I will put some seeds in my meal, or I will make a dressing out of seeds. So I'll make a tahini dressing, or out of nuts and seeds, a tahini dressing, an almond dressing, a macadamia nut dressing, and I'll either put that over my salad, or I'll just put those seeds in my salad and have those. So when I do this, and one thing I've learned, and it seems there's a lot of cats and planes out today, for whatever reason. Okay, so when I do my seeds, and this, I'm telling you, is going to bless you tremendously, this tip. When you're going to eat seeds, you should know the day before, hey, I don't have any avocados in the house. I'm going to eat some seeds. When you eat, or nuts, when you eat nuts, do your best to soak them the night before. Not everyone does this, but I always feel better and notice a big difference when I soak my nuts the night before I consume them. Whether it's a half a cup of almonds, a handful of pistachio nuts, some macadamia nuts, whether I'm making a dressing out of it or not, I will still do my best to soak them the night before I consume them. And I definitely notice a difference in my digestion when the nuts are soaked, because nuts on a tree are actually wet, they're not dried. And when you're eating nuts from the store, they're actually dried nuts. They're dehydrated. So you're eating a dehydrated food. I am not a fan, and I'll make a video about that another time, of dehydrated foods. I'm not a fan of them. Another thing you might notice is when I spoke about fats, I spoke about nuts versus avocado, one or the other. Where's the oil? Where's the oil? I have noticed that oil, even the raw vegan oils, the plant-based nut oils or the plant-based vegetable oils do not help myself with digestion or with picking up the signal, hey, it's time to stop eating. I've noticed I do better without consuming oil. If I want avocado, I eat avocado oil. I mean, if I want avocado oil, I'll eat avocado. If I want olive oil, I'll eat olives. So this is the way I find this working. So something to consider is if you're going to have sprouted nuts and seeds along mixed with an avocado, that's something you want to consider also. But a sprouted nut and seed or bean is a little bit different than a dried nut that most people are eating. So not to get too confusing, keep your fats separate, folks. If you're going to eat nuts for that day, that's your fat. And if you're going to eat avocado for that day, that's your fat. Try not to mix avocado and nuts, especially in the same meal, but ultimately in the same day. As I said, seeds are a little bit more forgiving. If you're going to have some sort of olive oil or avocado oil or something like this, remember, this is from the source if you're having it. So I wouldn't have avocado oil and nuts in the same meal. If I am going to add an avocado oil, I'm going to make sure, okay, well, that meal has to have avocado with it. But if I'm eating the avocado, I find I don't need the oil. So just some things to consider. And the last thing I'll say when it comes to getting that signal to know when it's time to stop eating and being full is, yes, mono meal or least ingredients as possible, following correct food combining, but the last one is salt. I have found for me, and you might find it different, is when I add salt to the meal, I miss that signal to say, hey, it's time to stop eating. And I do feel within my meal, when I have salt, I overconsume my food. I eat more that goes beyond that signal to say, hey, it's time to stop. So I try to not have salt in these meals, and I try to definitely be conscious of how much I'm eating when I do have salt included, whether it's in a salad dressing or in a recipe or something else. But I find salt is something for me that makes me want to eat more than I should. So I'm just sharing tips with you of things that have helped me stay at 100% raw vegan diet for all these years, 30 years, and I'm very transparent in what I do. In the middle of my journey in the years, I tried to experiment with cooked food, miscombining, and even raw animal products, how it was turned into a tragedy and it was terrible. So I quickly got back to eating what's been working for all these years, a raw vegan diet. And I've been 100% raw vegan diet straight now for a long time. And this works. This works. And I hope these pointers and tips are giving you some ideas of how to be successful at being on an all raw vegan diet. Now, with that in mind, you don't need to be 100% raw vegan. The only reason I do it is because I don't want to go back to my disease state. And I know if I add some cooked food, it can open up the floodgates and open up the issues that came back with that. But if somebody's eating a mostly raw vegan diet and a few cooked foods in there, they can be healthy. But still, the tips and suggestions I'm giving you are still going to help you to not overeat. So let's recap. No more than 3 meals a day, 2 would be ideal. Try to eat the foods that have the most liquid in them with the foods with the most liquid in them. I'm not a fan of dehydrating. When you're eating fats, either avocado or nuts, not both in the same meal or the same day if you can help it. And don't eat late at night. I didn't mention that one, but that's another big one. And so if you follow those tips, it should put you on a successful path, whether you want to be all raw or just have a lot of fruits and vegetables in your diet. I hope these tips and suggestions help. And I do recommend you get a food combining chart, which I will put a link below to the food combining chart on my website. It's a wonderful chart. You could see and learn all about food combining, starches and fats and what goes with what. It's a beautiful chart, and I'll put that link below as well. If you have comments and questions, please post them below. And thank you for watching, everybody. Have a great day and a great raw life.
Nature's wealth, good for your health. This is the Raw Life Health Show.